think we'll start off the evening with our few business matters we have to cover. And I'd like to call on Bob Britton, Jr.
We have just two matters, the election of directors and officers, and I'd like to turn it over to Edith Carrington, who ran the nominating committee, to read the slate of officers and directors.
The officers for next year will be Timer Downs, President, Hy Carrington, Vice President, Ed Sapiga, Secretary, Bob Britton, Jr., Treasurer. And for directors at large, Ed Sapiga, Isabel Anderson, and Will Brinton.
Okay, are there any further nominations? Seeing none? All those in favor of the slate of officers and directors say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The slate's elected. The other item is a motion to increase the membership fee for life members from current $100 to $150 effective January 1st. Is there any discussion on that?
Why?
Cost of living increases. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Motion is carried.
Democracy at work. Okay, I have a few announcements. In the back, we have our visitors from the South, Woodbridge Historical Society, and they have a quilt they're going to raffle off. They have a meeting coming up on November 20th, and it sounds fairly interesting. Woodbridge Grange Fairs from 1927-1930. At that time, they'll be holding that raffle. And there's also a big note on here, free popcorn. But you can take a look at that raffle in the back there, the quilt. It's really nice. I received a letter just the other day from our Bethany Carriage Shed Restoration Committee. And as you know, we were involved with that a little bit. Dear Timer, on behalf of the Carriage Connection Committee, I would like to express my appreciation for your help in making October 4th, 1997 a day to remember. The celebration could not have been a success if it had been without your help. The committee depended on a great number of community citizens to accomplish their primary objectives of raising money to restore and preserve historic church carriage shed. In addition to this objective, we also had the feeling that Bethany needed a community party that everyone could enjoy. You made it happen. Thank you. And signed Art Slicer. And that's not to me, it's to the organization. And I think we did have a good party that day. Also, I would like all of you to consider this your historical society. And don't forget to join us. Sign up out in the lobby. Put in your book orders. And join us for refreshments, things like that. Also, you've probably noticed the prints. George McDermott has done all these. They're beautiful prints. And he is selling these in a set or individually. They do not come framed, but they're a beautiful set. And you can sign up for those out in the lobby. Also, coming up on the 15th, by popular demand, we're having chicken again. And our raffle and live music. and tickets are available out in the lobby. Also, you probably, every time you come here, you hear me asking for money or sign up for this or do that. And we have received quite a few real nice donations to finish off our building over there, mainly the roof. But just recently we received a real nice one from our senator, Senator Crisco. And he came through with $15,000, which is really going to make a big difference to us. And if you should happen to see him, thank him on behalf of the Historical Society. We thought maybe he might be here this evening, but that was a real nice thing to come down. Okay, at this time I'd like to call on Bob Rittman to tell us what we're doing this evening. Bob?
Well, it's awfully good to see so many people out here tonight. I think we got between 80 and 90 people on a rainy night. We had a little problem with publicity, and we also have another program running opposite us at the school, so really happy to see all of you folks out here. From the Brinton point of view, since I'm the program chairman, I want to make a couple of comments just about programs in general, and then we'll get on to tonight's program. This is our 13th history program that we have put on, the first one being in 1993. We've done 3 a year, every year, exclusively about Bethany history, exclusively. And we're very proud that just people like yourselves and Mrs. Ash tonight have come forward and have been willing to share what they have learned about Bethany history with the rest of you. The one thing I do notice is that once you give a talk before the Historical Society, you never miss another meeting. I'm not quite sure why. So this is the 13th one. We have a few ideas for our winter meeting in February. It's not really firmed up. Maybe one of you could help us. When you go out, when you go by the sign-up sheets for membership and the book and so forth, I've made a list, or my son Will has made a list of the talks that have been given and 50 possible talks that may come up in the future. I know that sounds a little ambitious. And what we need is not ideas. I mean, we can come up with more than 50. This is just a start. Because adding to this 50, we could do biographies of many interesting people that have lived in Bethany. I can think of a dozen or two right now. So it's probably closer to 100 possible topics. What we would like is we would like you to come forward, come see me, or when I approach you, don't run away. And we'd like to have as many of you as possible try to come and give us your knowledge and your interests in Bethany. So please see me. That's all there is for the commercial. Tonight's talk is about Hazel Hoppe's book, Bethany Pebbles and Flowers. And this all starts a number of years ago. I don't know how many years ago. I hope you don't remember. When Hazel was writing, she wrote a few chapters of the book, asked me to look at them, and I just thought it was wonderful. It's one of those things, for me anyway, being interested in Bethany history, I just couldn't put it down because it was about Hazel's experiences growing up in the town. And it's an interesting period of history, and Hazel's an excellent writer, incidentally. The point I want to get to here is that she finally finished the book, and after a period of time, we have come up with this. Nobody's seen this yet. This is the book, Bethany Pebbles and Flowers. Hazel hasn't seen this yet. I haven't seen this until, maybe 20 minutes ago when Alvin Eisenman walked in the door. So this is really a collaborative effort. It's written by Hazel Hoppe, a townsperson, edited by Marian Ash, an experienced and proficient editor, artistically designed by a professional designer, Alvin Eisenman. All members of the society, all Bethany residents. This is really where things come together. When we can produce something like this, which incidentally retails for $10, and you can sign up for it. Excellent gifts for the holidays. Okay, cutting to the chase. You want to hear what Marian Ash has to say. Hazel's going to help us in identifying some of the photographs. My son Will has taken contemporary photographs and also made slides of earlier photographs so that you can get an idea of the time period that Hazel is writing about in her book, and that Marian, the editor of the book, is going to be describing for us. Marian Ash has lived in Bethany for, as she describes it, almost 22 years. And she's worked for Yale University Press. She retired about 9 years ago, and we've been trying to keep her busy ever since. She was an executive editor of the press, so she's had a lot of experience in editing. And fortunately, she and Alvin have had experience working together, so it was a nice mix. She's been active in Bethany as Registrar of Voters, Democratic Registrar of Voters, member of the Conservation Commission, Secretary of the Democratic Town Committee, member of the Bethany Lions Club. So she's been involved in a lot of different town activities. And I guess without any further ado, I would like to introduce Marian Ash. Just tell us when you want the lights on. Oh.
Now, can you hear me? It's too loud, too soft? Okay. But first of all, I want to discuss the title of the book for a moment. The title of the book is Bethany Pebbles and Flowers. And that you may feel doesn't tell you all you might like to know about the book. I would like to read a passage from Henry Van Dyke that Mrs. Hoppe found when she took this title.
You got a little closer to the mic. It's hard to hear it now. What do you want?
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Put it down a little bit.
This is the passage from which the title is taken. Memory is a capricious and arbitrary creature. You never can tell what pebble she will pick up from the shore of life and keep among her treasures, or what inconspicuous flower of the field she will preserve as the symbol of, quote, thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears, end of quote. And yet I do not doubt that the most important things are always the best remembered. And she says, here then I would share some of the pebbles and flowers among my treasures. The book is partly her memories of growing up in Bethany, or the first 6-7 years of her life, when she was living in the Denzil-Hoadley house over on the eastern side of town. It's partly the result of research she has done. She has made a field trip to Sturbridge Village to find out how a grist mill worked, so she could describe how the Hoadley mills operated. She's read Tyler Davidson's journal, books about Bethany, newspapers, everything she could find. So while the period of the book is mostly the 1920s, when she was a small child, it spills over beyond that, almost into the present in some cases. And she also draws on the recollections of her parents, talking about their lives in Bethany. She herself was born in Bethany in 1918 in a small house on Route 69 at the corner of Porter Hill Road. The house is no longer there, though she says the foundations can be seen. The family moved shortly thereafter to the Denzil-Hoadley house, where they lived until 1927 when they moved to New Haven. They subsequently moved back to Bethany, where Mrs. Hoppe has lived ever since. Let's see if I can get this going. that? Is it in focus? That's just a general picture of Bethany in 1920, and that is Tucker Downs, Mrs. Hoppe's uncle, in a field with West Rock Ridge in the background. Mrs. Hoppe's family, on both sides, were descended from early settlers in Bethany. Her grandfather, Wilbur Lounsbury, is shown here on the roof of the Woody Horse Barn. He's in the center with the hat, I believe, and the horse barn is still standing. He was a carpenter, constructed many buildings in Bethany. This is his house on Hoadley Road, probably built by him. Mrs. Hoppe tells a story about the well you see in front of the house. It seems that when her father was 4 years old, his father was digging the well. And this little 4-year-old boy was playing around in the yard, and he came across a pile of stones. Wow, what is more enticing to a little boy than to pick up a stone and plop it into the hole in the ground? So he plopped the stone in, hit his father on the head, and earned himself a spanking, which I don't suppose seemed as funny to him as at the time as it did years later as he told the story. This is Mrs. Hoppe's father, Elford, shown here in front of the Episcopal parsonage. At one time he was sexton of this church. For most of his life he worked on farms. The Woodward farm, shown here with the 3 Woodward children. The Whitlock farm, then on the section of Litchfield Turnpike that is now Brinton Road. The Saxton farm, on the corner of Carrington and Hilldale Roads. And the barn on the left is still there. And the Tyler Davidson farm at the intersection of Carrington Road and Litchfield Turnpike, known as Davidson's Corner, where he was working in the 1920s when Mrs. Hoppe was a child. It was a dairy farm with cornfields, hayfields, a vegetable garden, everything else farms at the time had. In the late 1920s, there was also a tea room. Wilbur Lounsbury, her grandfather, built some addition on the left. Her father was also at one time custodian of the community school, a library, and the town hall. He also did various public-spirited things for the town, such as helping to clear the roads of snow and other things of that kind. Mrs. Hoppe's mother, Nellie, was a Downs, shown here on the west side of the Denzil Hoadley house, where the family lived during the period covered by the book. She was the daughter, and I might just point out that you can see the cornfield on the left-hand upper side behind her, which is mentioned in the book. The children loved to play in the cornfield. She was the daughter of Jerome Downs, Jr., and his first wife, Florence Rathbun. Jerome Downs was first selection of Bethany at one time, as was Mrs. Hoppe's half-uncle, Stanley Downs, better known as Tucker. And here we have 3 generations of Mrs. Hoppe's family, skipping the grandmothers who had both died at early ages. Her mother is in the left rear. Her great-grandmother, Alta Hotchkiss Downs, in the right rear, and the 5 Lounsbury girls in the middle. And with shy Hazel in the front, looking down at her feet. And you will observe in most pictures taken of Hazel, she is looking down shyly. Here is shy Hazel, looking a little less shy, but nevertheless a shy child. West Rock Ridge is in the background, and the cherry tree, which she mentions in the book, is in the background. Now, the period when the family was living in the Denzil Hoadley house was the 1920s, early 1920s. 1920s. And the Bethany of the 20s that she describes in the book was a rural community with agriculture the main occupation. And I have a few scenes of agriculture in that period. I am told that Tyler Downs is on the right in this photograph. It's probably a 1916 Model T Ford, and the place is probably the Saxton Farm. This is the farm scene at the intersection of Carrington Road and Litchfield Turnpike. All these around that period. This is another farm scene. This is the Wooding Farm, and this is probably Will Wooding sitting in the whatever that is. This is a haystack, I am told. This is probably at the Saxton Farm. And here we have a picture taken at the Carrington Farm. And this is the early farm on Bear Hill Road. There were few businesses in town at that time, as today one might say, one being the Dewdrop Inn, operated by Aunt Katie Humiston on the corner of Amity Road and Munson Road, which served candy, ice cream, homemade cookies, cakes, pies. Totally unlike Bethany's favorite hangout today, Billy's Ice Cream, which is just across Munson Road from the old Dewdrop Inn. And here is the front of the menu of the Dewdrop Inn. One business that had come and gone in Bethany long before Mrs. Hoppe was a child was Tyler Davidson's Telephone Company. And this is Tyler Davidson, prominent Bethany figure, first selectman, entrepreneur, and farm owner. This view shows some of the telephone poles that were cut from Lebanon swamp and put up by Davidson for his telephone company. And this is another picture of Davidson Corner, his home, from which he ran the telephone company, which was, alas, in operation only a few years before the Southern New England Telephone Company began to move into Bethany. He tried unsuccessfully to sell it to SNET and then also to a Waterbury Telephone Company, but he was not successful in this, and he finally had to shut it down. But all of this took place around the turn of the century. Also in operation during the 1920s was the airport. This is the hangar Mrs. Hoppe remembers from her childhood. A close-up of a plane. The house Mrs. Hoppe lived in, she calls the other Hoadley House. We're all familiar with the Hoadley House on Amity Road, built by the architect David Hoadley and now in the National Register of Historic Places. But her memories are of the other Hoadley House, the Denzel Hoadley House in the eastern part of town where her family lived. During the 1920s, they rented it from the water company for $100 a year. And this is a view of the Denzel Hoadley House taken from the year 1931. The house is kind of on the right center. You see Litchfield Turnpike up there, Hoadley Road down here, water company, trees in the foreground. The house is seen from the west here, the Hoadley Bridge in the foreground. Shows the outbuildings. A little closer there, you can see there are outbuildings, a horse barn, a woodshed, a pig house, all described by Mrs. Hoppe in the book. This photograph is also taken from a distance, seen from the west. And this shows the outbuildings a little better. Various barns, as most farms did have at the time, for horses, pigs, whatever they had. This is the house taken at the time the Hoadleys lived there, before the Lounsbury's moved in. It shows the Hoadley family and a cellar door there that you can see. which Mrs. Hoppe and her sisters slid down in the summertime, sometimes ending up with slivers in their sliding surfaces, which her mother had to remove. Another view of the house, and yet another view of the house. And this is the house today, and you can see in the foreground two of the millstones that were taken from the mill. This is a picture of a horse barn, a larger structure, and the horse barn today was probably built by Mrs. Hoppe's grandfather. Close by, of course, were the Hoadley Mills. A prominent feature of life long before Mrs. Hoppe was born. They were not the only mills in Bethany, but they were the best known and most active. I tend to get confused about which was the upper mill and the lower mill, and perhaps someone will correct me if I'm wrong. But
I think I checked that. That the upper mill, the water from this dam, which was west of the bridge, they had built a sluice way that went under the bridge. The water flowed through that into the sawmill, which was below the bridge.
is this the upper dam?
Yes.
This is the upper dam
Yes.
on what was then called Buttonball Road, because there was a big buttonball tree. It's now Hoadley.
I can't, I don't know how to turn this thing on. I could point these things out. You show me where you switch it on the cabinet.
Brenda will help her with the pointer.
You showed me how to turn this on.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it's on? It's on. Well, I put the pointer to the red spot to point out next. Oh, this is the button. Now I see it. That would be the upper dam.
That's the upper dam.
And this is Buttonball Road, where the tree was. I'm not sure just where it was there.
And that
And
is
this is the
upper mill.
well, the sawmill, which is below the bridge. I think you can still see the foundation, possibly in that part. I'm not sure just where, somewhere along there.
And here we
And
have
that, I think, might be the sawmill.
the sawmill.
I think, I'm quite sure that's
Lower
the
mill.
sawmill.
There's a sawmill. So there's a mill stone, the picture taken recently. Enormous heavy thing. As I say, Mrs. Hoppe describes in the book exactly how this worked, how the grinding was done, what the various parts of the machinery were. This is the upper mill.
That's the sawmill.
It's also the sawmill.
I'm sorry, I think of Christmas.
This is the lower dam today with a mill pond, which I will mention again in a moment. That's the upper mill. That was a grist mill and cider mill.
The upper building.
At these sites, two of the Hoadley children were tragically killed, and Mrs. Hoppe tells the stories in the book. Jesse, age 2, wandered down to this pond and fell in and drowned. And the gravestone in the Methodist cemetery has this on it. The eve of one sad April night, she went at the call of the angels to dwell in the regions of light. George Hoadley, 7 years later, that was in 1883. In 1890, George Hoadley then 14 years old, went down to the grist mill to do some grinding, and his mother thought something sounded odd, and she went down after a while with one of her other children, and they found George. He had on a heavy coat, which had caught in the shaft and twisted around his chest, and he had been suffocated and he had died. And the two children are buried side by side in the Methodist cemetery. And this is the gravestone. The inscription is just about worn off. It's now over 100 years. But there they are. This is a contemporary picture of Hoppe Road, then called Buttonball Road, at Litchfield Turnpike. And this is the Hoadley Bridge. This area was very close to the house. The children spent a great deal of time down here. They played in the brook. They gathered berries. They did all kinds of things down here. Another scene of the bridge. And then this is a contemporary scene which shows that the understructure has remained, is the same understructure that it was before. Now, as I say, the children often went down to play in this area. They picked berries, and they had an ingenious way of making a container to carry berries. They put together two big maple leaves. They took twigs and wove them through the leaves and kind of stitched them together, and then they put the berries inside. Mrs. Hoppe was kind enough to make one a few weeks ago, and this is a picture taken by Dennis Martins, which shows Mrs. Hoppe with a basket. And here we have a close-up of the basket. It was hard to photograph, but you can see the maple leaves there. And they're stitched together with twigs, and the children carried their berries in that. And she also tells a story of the children beginning to see a young couple who came to picnic at the bridge. And one day, on an impulse, they offered the couple their berries, and in return they were given Oreo cookies, which they had never had. And this was such a wonderful experience they didn't forget it. Years later, one of her sisters was talking to friends who mentioned that they had often picnicked at the bridge when they were young, and once had been approached by children who gave them berries and were given goodies in return. The young couple was none other than Dr. Malcolm Brenton, shown here at the bridge with a dog named Duke, I believe, and Anna Brenton sitting on the bridge. And they were, of course, the parents of our distinguished citizen, Bob Brenton. Mrs. Hoppe has a lovely chapter on springtime in Bethany in those years. And I'd like to read her description of what their horse did at that time. They had a horse named Prince. The family had one horse. It was a one-horse farm, she says, and a one-cow farm. And Prince was one of the hardest working members of the family. But I'll read this paragraph which will show you what a lovely writing style she has and the kind of vivid example of things that happened in her childhood, which is so different from childhood today. She said, on those mornings when Prince was not needed to pull the surrey or buggy, Mama would let him out of his stall in the lower part of the barn to enjoy the springtime. There was no need to lead him to pasture, for his destination was always the same, the spot where the clover and alfalfa grew. Now keep out of the driveway, Mama would caution us. Then we all took cover under the grape arbor and waited as she walked down to the barn. Soon we heard the thunderous sound of hoofs pounding up the stony driveway. The horse flashed by, and we stared as he flew to the alfalfa bed. Instantly he flopped down among the blossoms and rolled back and forth in a state of ecstasy, all four legs waving in the air. Whinny after whinny burst forth as he celebrated his freedom. It was nice to think that Prince had some fun in life too, because he worked very hard. The children also celebrated their freedom in the spring, taking off, for example, the hated long winter underwear. In the spring, also all winter and in the spring, the schools are an important part of their lives. Now this, I believe, if I have the schools straight, they're all one-room schools. This is the Smith School on Farrington Road, Beecher School, Sperry Road, where the Lounsbury girls went to school. And I believe this is also the Beecher School. And the next picture is one I like particularly. She mentions a teacher, Miss Elizabeth Shallot, and when I was reading the manuscript, I hoped, I didn't really think there would be a picture of Miss Shallot. But here, oh, pardon me, that's the inside of the Beecher School. There's nobody in it. Here we have Miss Shallot in the upper left.
Would you like me to name these people, or?
These are the Beecher class of 1926. They are all identified in the book. And do you want to name them? If you,
well, the ones you know, that's Dorothy Ewens Custer. That's George Riley, Henry Riley's younger brother. Earl Bachelor, Anna Natcook, Barbara Schill, and that's me. And Tom Harrison, my sister Dot, Dorothy Lounsbury, Helen Lounsbury, Thelma Hill, John Harrison, Dorothy Strong, Helen Matcher, Dick Bachelor, and those two, and that boy at the end, I can't remember the names, they lived here a short time. That was our class at Beecher School, 1926 or 7, somewhere at that time. The whole school that was.
And there were at that time many programs that took place in the town hall, such as graduation, school graduation. This is, of course, a contemporary picture of the town hall. That's a picture of the members of the Grange who also put on events at the town hall. Then she has a chapter which is one of my favorites. She calls Shanksmere, Prince and the Model T, in which she discusses the kind of transportation the family had when she was young and how things changed over time through the age of the automobile. Children walked everywhere. Of course, they walked to the Dewdrop Inn. She and her sisters walked to the Dewdrop Inn from her home to get ice cream in the summer. The roads, of course, were dirt and they were barefoot. Adults walked to work in Naugatuck. They walked to Hampton to catch the trolley to a job in New Haven. Walking was often the way people got from one place to another. Horses, of course, did heavy duty, sometimes being ridden and pulling a great variety of carts. This is a horse at the Saxton farm, and I should say that also that Prince, the Lounsbury's horse, pulled them everywhere they wanted to go to visit friends, or he took them down to the Amity area to get the trolley that went down Whaley Avenue to the New Haven Green. On Sundays he took them to church and waited in the carriage shed we're also familiar with. But unfortunately we have no pictures of Prince. This is a horse and buggy on Bethmore Road with Ira Carrington Sr. This is just the kind of horse-drawn vehicle that would have been used in that day, and this was taken on Carriage Connection Day 2 weeks ago. This is a farm wagon on Cherry Tree Farm on Bethmore Road. And, of course, in winter they went around in sleighs, and this, I'm told, is probably Arthur Doolittle on Downs Road with West Rock Ridge in the background. Milk was delivered by horse-drawn vehicle, and in winter by a horse-drawn sled. This is Mrs. Hoppe's grandfather, Jerome Downs, delivering milk on Winthrop Avenue in New Haven.
sled that he carried the milk cans on it. You can't see the people very well, but my mother and her sister and a couple of gentlemen, I guess one was my grandfather.
It's a wonderful picture.
But the housewife would come up with a picture and they would get the milk out of their 10-quart can, I think and sell a pitcher of milk. I don't know what it cost, but that's the way they took it in those days. I was, I think, early in the century.
Another popular means of transportation was the bicycle. This is a bicycle. Incredibly, she tells a story she says that teenagers would get up early on a Sunday morning. They would bicycle to Savin Rock, spend the day there enjoying the amusements, entertainment, and they would bike home in the evening up these long hills, although sometimes pushing the bikes up the hills. A stopping place for bicycling, people riding their bikes, was Wheelman's Rest on the corner of Litchfield Turnpike and what is now Bethway Road. Serve refreshments of a non-alcoholic nature. Eventually, a second story was added to this building, which was called Beecher Hall, where Edson Beecher played the fiddle for dancing. And he is in that photo. Do you want to point him out? Hoppe?
Edson Beecher did this fiddle, and the others are, well, his sons are Jesse and Bert, that was Charlie, and that was Mrs. Beecher, his wife. She was a neighbor, McClure, and I don't know who the other gentleman was.
That was a nice place to stop when we were going on a long bicycle ride. The first automobile that passed through Bethany, according to Tyler Davidson's journal, quoted by Mrs. Hoppe, appeared in April 1900. And the last stagecoach went through in 1907. The roads were not too good, certainly not good enough for automobiles. And Mrs. Hoppe describes the gradual paving of the main roads in Bethany as the dirt roads disappeared and paved roads appeared. In another chapter called Barefoot Days, she describes summer in Bethany and the activities that went on the farm chores that even the little girl participated in, the inventive games they played, making daisy chains, picking buttercups to hold under their chins, making dolls' plates out of burdock leaves, for example. And they made everything and created their own games. They made dolls' houses out of orange crates, made little tables out of thread spools and cardboard, cut paper dolls out of Sears Roebuck catalogs. When the family went visiting, she said, the little girls always made a beeline to the outhouse because they were looking for the Sears Roebuck catalog, which was there for a well-known purpose. And they used to cut out the figures in there and use them for their doll playing. Her memories of these golden days of summer are sweet. She especially remembers going with her mother to pick apples and then watching her mother make apple pies. She describes her mother's way of making apple pies in detail. During the summer also, of course, there had to be a swimming hole. And their swimming hole nearby was Wooding's Pond. This is the Wooding house that many of us are familiar with. This is Will Wooding, first selectman in the 1920s. The Wooding Pond was across Wooding Road from the house. It's still there, of course, but it's behind some houses. The children walked there alone. They had no lifeguard, no supervision. The older children taught the younger ones to swim, and none of them seemed to mind the muck and the mud. These happy times ended when the New Haven Water Company decided that no swimming could be allowed in water flowing into the Bethany. And Here's a nice picture of the Lounsbury girls and a friend at the pond. Do you want to identify these people, Mrs. Hunt?
Oh.
Sisters?
This, the one at the bottom is my older sister, Florence Johnson. I think that's
Is that a shy Hazel?
Yeah, I think I have met her. My sister Dot, Dorothy. There's many sitting in the audience tonight. Mary McCarthy, a friend of ours, and that's my sister Helen. And I described how we wore dresses swimming. But we didn't have a bathing suit that would stop us. We wore an old dress and wore that.
They tied the dress down so when they jumped in it didn't fly up.
A large safety pin put a pin between.
This is the Woodings barn. The right-hand part in the rear was built by Mrs. Hoppe's grandfather. We saw his picture earlier, standing on the roof in front of the cupola. And this is Allie Wooding, known to many. And eventually, Peck Pond became the swimming center for Bethany children. Mrs. Hoppe describes how it came into being as the town swimming facility. A picture of Peck Pond, and now, as you all know, we will be swimming in Bethany West. Then she has a chapter on called Barn Dance, which tells us about the square dancing that took place in Bethany for many years and continues even unto today. Her father was a caller, and she heard many stories about dancing into the wee hours in Beecher Hall, the second-story building over Williams Rest, which we saw earlier. At a later date, the dancing took place at Perry's Hall, which is the building on the right. It was on Amity Road across from the Congregational Church. This is an inside picture. This is inside Perry's Hall. It was also used for weddings and other festive events. While the Lounsburys were living in the Densel Hoadley house, they gave dances in the old barn. She describes the preparing of the barn floor, the naps the children had to take in the afternoon, the arrival of the guests, the refreshments, the lighting of kerosene lamps, the moving of the piano from the house to the barn, and finally the dancing, which the children watched until they were sent to bed, where they listened to the sounds of the violin and piano drifting up the hill and through the open window. Later there was Perkins Hall, also called Maple Hall, north of the Dewdrop Inn. The dances were also held at Cherry Tree Farm on Bedmore Road. Willow Crest was probably the last of the barns, he says, to accommodate square dancing. Carnival is a chapter about the summer event in Bethany, which has been going on since the 1930s. It began as a 4th of July celebration, she writes, featuring a bonfire. And here we see a pile of crates, boxes, and other combustible materials ready to be lit. And here's another pile, Bethany set for holiday bonfire tonight. These events, these bonfires and the carnival took place on Hoppe Field, the town's athletic field. This is a contemporary view and the marker for our athletic field. In 1941, the New Haven Register described the bonfire held in conjunction with the, quote, annual fire department athletic club carnival. After World War II, the celebrations were resumed and blossomed into a joint fire department Bethany Athletic Association carnival. Mrs. Hoppe describes the carnival features popular in those days and traces the history of the event in later years. No book on life in a rural New England town would be complete with without a chapter on the church. For many years, the Lounsburys belonged to the Methodist Church. On Litchfield Turnpike, which no longer exists, though at one time was a very active center of that is an inside view of the church. There are not many interiors of Bethany buildings, but this is a very nice one. The Methodists had broken off from the Episcopal Church, where, according to one of the early clergy serving the New Methodist Church, quote, the warm-hearted portion of the Episcopal Church at times grew a little warm, and at such times they made more noise than the cooler members of the church liked. End of quote. They were, Mrs. Hoppe comments, emotional to say the least. The church was established in 1830 as fortunes ebbed and flowed. Mrs. Hoppe has done considerable research on the history of the church, which began a steady decline in the 1920s and finally came to its end in 1955. The lowest stone step survives, here shown with the cemetery behind it, and an inscribed stone marks the place where the church stood. The next to last chapter of the book is entitled Country Kitchen. Alas, we have no pictures to illustrate this warm, busy, fragrant center of family activity. The only kitchen picture we have around in Bethany is of the Wooding kitchen, which many years before Mrs. Hoppe was born. She goes into meticulous detail to describe what the family ate, how the food was cooked, what utensils were used, how food was kept cold and well during the summer, and so forth. The big wood-burning stove is the center of life in the winter. And I'm going to quote a paragraph from the book. How many mouth-watering meals Mama prepared over the flaming sticks of wood in the belly of our stove. She was an excellent cook and very adept in making a delicious meal out of whatever ingredients happened to be on hand. Nowhere has anyone succeeded in duplicating the flavor and texture of a pan of baked beans, simmered briefly on top of the stove, then dressed with molasses and a generous chunk of salt pork, plenty of salt and pepper, and sometimes a sliced onion. This would be tucked away in the oven to bake slowly for hours. It would be impossible to summarize everything that went on in the kitchen, the washing of people and clothes, and the ironing, evenings around the wood-burning stove. It was a center of family activities. And she concludes in her chapter on the kitchen. We were soon to see the end of preparing meals on the old wood stove, the end of the washboard and the wringer, rollers turned by hand, and the sad iron. No one would wish to return to those years of inconveniences that our generation remembers so well. Yet there was a warm and cheery feeling in the homes of those days, a family love and loyalty that seemed to nurture us all, a shield against all the lean years that are a part of each life. The final chapter of the book is called Years In. And having read what it was like in Bethany and other seasons of the year, we read what events brought the year to a close. Halloween adventures, high on the list being the toppling of an outhouse, the evenings around the piano where Mrs. Hoppe's mother played familiar songs and the children sang. And I have to say on a personal note that I was delighted to see that Whispering Hope was one of the songs that they sang, because when I was growing up in New Jersey, my mother and her sister sang Whispering Hope, my aunt being soprano, my mother contralto, and we children loved to hear Whispering Hope, so that I was interested to read that this was going on in Connecticut at the same time. And of course there was the Thanksgiving feast, cutting the Christmas hemlock on Grandfather Jerome Down's property, kitchen activities, and the sound of Mrs. Hoppe's mother's sewing machine as she made rag dolls and dolls' clothing as Christmas gifts, popping popcorn, shopping in New Haven. And of course, during the winter, there was sledding. These children are probably on Carrington Road near the Smith School. This is probably Carrington Road near Litchfield Turnpike. Mrs. Hoppe mentions the Christmas tree in the Episcopal Church, and here it is. And while she looks back fondly at those happy days of yore, Mrs. Hoppe also looks forward to Bethany's future. At the end of her book, she writes, in spite of the many evolving changes in our time, we still retain much of our bucolic charm. We cannot foresee the future any more than those stalwart men and women who settled here and built their homes so long ago could have envisioned the Bethany of today. We can only hope that in the years to come, our town will retain the essence that makes it one of the best little towns in the whole wide world. So that is her book, and there are proofs, as Bob says, for you to look at. And I've only been able to touch on things in this book. It's a book just rich with detail about life, particularly in the 1920s, and how people lived and how different that life was from the lives that we lead today. And it shows gradual evolution to today's world. And the book will be a beautiful book. We're very fortunate to have a world-class book designer living in Bethany. And Alvin Eisenman has contributed his time, his talent, and his experience to designing the book and producing the book. And so I hope all of you will read it and many of you will buy it. Thanks.
Well, you're going to be a tough act to follow. Excellent. This is very, very good. Informative and enjoyable. In addition to the really three people that were required for this book, certainly Marian, Alvin Eisenman, you all know, sitting in the back there. Without him, we could not have done it. And we hear a little hand of... Final note is about the book. By the way, with a wonderful illustration of a painting of the Methodist Church. Just excellent. The book is fine. One note is that before Alvin walked into the door with his first copy, by the way, you can't walk out with these tonight. You're welcome to look at them, but we still have a little more stuff to do about on them. We're going to write a little bit about the author on the back. She doesn't know that yet. And a couple other things. But we will take your orders, and we should have them ready for delivery in about 2 weeks, maybe, Alvin? Something like that? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Week.
1 week. And so anyway, there are going to be 3 of these out. Be sure and look at them. Interestingly enough, as I was saying, before Alvin walked in the door with the first copy, Hazel hadn't seen the copy. I hadn't seen the copy. We already sold nearly 50 of them. People have signed up. So that's how much Bethany people think of Bethany history and Hazel as an author. Again.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Sitting back there, I had to think of Hazel mentioned Button Ball Road. And when I was a kid, I can remember going up to that corner. There was a buttonball tree. They're famous for hollowing out as they grow. And you used to be able to crawl in and stick your head in a hole in the bottom and see stars during the day. And I still remember that. Was a nice tree. Did you? Okay. Also, I think that all of us ought to reflect a little bit on what's going on in the center of our town. We've got the carriage shed all fixed up. We've got a new steeple on the Congregational Church. We've got our building 95% painted. And I think it's great. Thank you, Bethany. Everybody enjoy the refreshments back there.